Mortal Kombat has been running tournaments for centuries, and every single one was rigged from the start. The Elder Gods created a system where winning 10 straight tournaments lets you absorb another realm, then immediately let someone cheat in the very first match without consequence. So with that precedent established, let's break down every major tournament in Mortal Kombat history, starting with the one that created all the rules, the Great Kung Lao's Tournament. This is where it all started. The Elder Gods formalized their cosmic framework centuries ago. Win 10 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments, and your realm absorbs another. Simple, clean, absolute, and immediately tested. The Great Kung Lao defeated Shang Tsung, becoming Earthrealm's first recorded champion. Except Shang Tsung's loss triggered something worse than death. Defeated sorcerers age rapidly as their power fades, and Shang Tsung's supernatural decline became an obsession with reclaiming power through forbidden soul magic. The franchise's ultimate villain wasn't born in triumph. He was born in the aftermath of losing a fair fight and deciding to break every rule to reverse it. The Great Kung Lao's victory should have reset Outworld's tournament streak. Instead, Shang Tsung spent the following centuries perfecting soul sorcery, specifically to reclaim what he'd lost. The Elder Gods watched a defeated champion become a supernatural threat and did nothing to stop him from returning with illegal magic. Great start, but if you think one vengeful sorcerer is bad, wait until you see what Shang Tsung did with those centuries of forbidden power. Shang Tsung's 10th tournament. This is the one. The tournament the entire franchise is named after. The one every casual fan thinks they know inside and out. And they're mostly right. But the part everyone gets wrong is what actually saved Earthrealm, because it wasn't just Liu Kang landing a flying kick. Here's the setup. Outworld had won 9 consecutive Mortal Kombat tournaments. One more and Earthrealm was done, absorbed, gone. Shang Tsung showed up draining souls from every fighter he defeated just to sustain himself, which is, you know, a completely normal tournament director hobby. Raiden channeled power into Liu Kang. The Shaolin monk landed a flaming bicycle kick that has since become the defining image of this entire franchise. And Shang Tsung lost. Great. Victory. Roll credits. Except the tournament was already compromised before that final fight. Shang Tsung broke the rules of Mortal Kombat repeatedly throughout the event, using his sorcery to interfere, manipulating outcomes, and cheating openly in ways the tournament's own structure forbade. The Elder Gods didn't look at Outworld's 9-win streak and see a legitimate run. They saw a sorcerer gaming the entire system. Earthrealm's win mattered, but it mattered partly because Shang Tsung had handed the Elder Gods every reason to scrutinize Outworld's conduct going back years. The tournament's legitimacy question also planted something else. It convinced Shao Kahn, watching from Outworld, that playing by Elder God rules was a rigged game not worth bothering with. If the rules could be questioned this easily, why follow them at all? Which is exactly the problem we're about to walk into. Shao Ki Hin Sin's Outworld Tournament. Here's the thing about Shao Kahn. He didn't lose Mortal Kombat and then cheat to get back in. He cheated before the tournament even started, then ran a tournament anyway, because the man genuinely does not care. After Liu Kang's victory ended Outworld's run, Kahn needed a workaround, so he found one. He resurrected Queen Sindel, but he didn't do it in Outworld. He did it on Earthrealm soil. Under Elder God law, that act alone gave him legal grounds to invade direct, no tournament required, which makes everything that followed not a competition. It was a military occupation with a bracket attached. The invasion was immediate and overwhelming. Kahn merged the realms by force, pulling Outworld and Earthrealm together and mass resurrecting dead Earthrealm souls to serve under him in the process. Millions of people were just gone, not defeated in a tournament, not beaten fair and square, erased from existence while the Elder Gods technically still had jurisdiction over the situation, and the fighters who remained had to push back against an occupied Earthrealm with Kahn's entire army already inside it. Not exactly the competitive format the original Mortal Kombat tournament was designed around, but Outworld never pretended to care about format. Here's the kicker. The invasion was always the plan. The tournament structure was never the point. The resurrection of Sindel on Earthrealm soil was a deliberate legal exploit, a loophole Kahn used to bypass 10 generations of tournament obligation in one move. The Elder Gods eventually ruled it a violation and stripped him of his power, but only after Earthrealm's population had already been decimated. Cool. Justice. Delivered slightly too late to be useful. Shao Kahn didn't break the rules mid-tournament. He made the entire event meaningless before it began, then invaded anyway, which is, not ideal. The Elder Gods were forced to respond, and their response escalated into something that makes a rigged invasion look like a minor administrative dispute. The Tournament of the Gods. Here's the thing about divine intervention. When the gods step in to fix a problem, they usually make it worse in a completely different way. After Shao Kahn's illegal invasion of Earthrealm, the Elder Gods had seen enough. Kahn didn't just bend the rules of Mortal Kombat, he shattered them by invading without winning the required 10 consecutive tournaments. So the Elder Gods did what divine beings apparently do when sufficiently annoyed. They obliterated him, not defeated him, not imprisoned him, straight up destroyed Shao Kahn for his violation of the Mortal Kombat laws, which sounds like a clean resolution. Turns out no. The problem with nuking the villain from existence is that it doesn't actually fix anything downstream. Outworld still exists. The power vacuum Kahn left behind still exists. And every warlord watching from the sidelines just learned a very specific lesson. The Elder Gods will intervene, but only after you've already caused catastrophic damage. The intervention is reactive, not preventive. You can do an enormous amount of harm before the cosmic rulebook gets enforced. Raiden spent this entire crisis running interference as a mortal, having sacrificed his godhood earlier to fight alongside his champions as an equal. That sacrifice is worth sitting with for a second. The God of Thunder voluntarily gave up his immortality to stand in the same arena as the people he was trying to protect. The Elder Gods permitted this, apparently fine with their own champion operating at a significant disadvantage. The central irony here is almost too perfect to be accidental. A tournament system designed to give Earthrealm a fighting chance kept producing situations where the rules themselves became the weapon. Kahn exploited the structure. The structure then destroyed him. And the lesson that calcified was that cosmic law only has teeth when the Elder Gods decide to use them. That is a genuinely terrible precedent to set. Speaking of terrible precedents, the Deadly Alliance took that same chaotic energy and somehow made it catastrophically worse. The Deadly Alliance tournament. Here's the thing about the Deadly Alliance tournament. It was never a tournament. It was a magic trick, and the fighters who died in it had zero idea they were the distraction. Shang Tsung and Quan Chi didn't just break the rules of Mortal Kombat. They dissolved the entire framework. No Elder God oversight. No Netherrealm reset on death. No cosmic arbitration. Just two sorcerers running an unsupervised killing floor and calling it a competition. The Elder Gods knew. They watched. They did nothing because the alternative, Onaga's army marching unchecked through the realms, was apparently worse. So they let it happen, which is, not ideal. Every confirmed fatality in this tournament was permanent. No soul recovery, no reset, no second chance in the afterlife. Gone. And the roster itself was already compromised before the first match, because this wasn't a fair fight between willing combatants. It was an invitation to a slaughterhouse dressed up in the familiar language of Mortal Kombat. The rules, such as they were, said nothing about what happened to the losers, because there were no rules. Kitana made it further than almost anyone, fighting her way through the competition before eventually falling to the Alliance's scheme. And none of it mattered, because the entire competition was a lie running parallel to the real operation. While fighters bled and died in the arena, Shang Tsung and Quan Chi were elsewhere, resurrecting Onaga's army. The tournament wasn't the plan. The tournament was the noise they made while they executed the plan. That legacy outlasted everyone involved. The loopholes, the complete indifference to divine oversight, the willingness to use the structure of Mortal Kombat itself as a cover story, all of it became the playbook for every large-scale manipulation that followed. Kronika didn't invent those vulnerabilities. She inherited them. If you think an unsupervised death tournament with no rules and no cosmic safety net is bad, the Battle of Armageddon didn't have a safety net either. It just had everyone. Here's the thing about Armageddon. It's not a tournament. It never was. It's what happens when every tournament that came before it leaves enough unresolved violence in the universe that the universe just stops tolerating it. Every warrior, every realm, one pyramid atop a volcano in Edenia, and by the time it was over, almost none of them were walking away. Not most of them, not the majority. Almost everyone who showed up died, which is a sentence that should hit harder than it probably does at this point in the videos. The pyramid was the prize. Blaze, an elemental being of almost incomprehensible power, sat at the top waiting for whoever was strong enough to reach him. The winning fighter would absorb that power and restore some kind of cosmic balance. Turns out, no. What actually happened was a full-scale war between every faction in the franchise simultaneously, with Shao Kahn and Quan Chi's forces against Raiden's alliance, and the whole thing collapsed into chaos before anyone claimed what they came for. Here's where the Raiden problem gets genuinely uncomfortable. The history books frame him as Earthrealm's protector, the Thunder God standing between humanity and total annihilation. But almost every hero died on that pyramid. Almost every villain, too. The conflict consumed itself. His final move is what the whole section turns on. In the battle's last moments, facing an outcome he couldn't reverse through combat, he sent a cryptic message back through time to his past self. He didn't win the fight. He fractured the timeline itself, erasing the version of history where Earthrealm lost and replacing it with a version where nobody is entirely sure what happened. That's not a victory. That's a god making the problem someone else's problem across a different dimension of time, which is honestly a bold strategy. The tournament system spent 10 generations promising that conflict had structure, rules, cosmic meaning. Armageddon is the franchise looking at that promise and lighting it on fire. If you think erasing one bad timeline sounds like a clean solution, wait until you see what the revised 10th tournament actually produced. The Raiden revised 10th tournament. Raiden sent himself a message backward through time. 3 words: he must win. Then he watched himself receive it in a rebooted timeline and proceed to make everything catastrophically worse. Here's the thing, Raiden had foreknowledge. He'd already seen this tournament end in total failure, watched Earthrealm burn, witnessed everyone die. Now he was playing the same contest again, with future memory fragments rattling around his skull, trying to steer toward a different outcome while every single intervention pushed events closer to the apocalypse he was desperately trying to prevent. The revised tournament was supposed to be Earthrealm's second chance. Same rules, different result. Except Raiden, operating on corrupted visions from his dying future self, kept misreading the warnings. The message said he must win. Raiden interpreted that as Shao Kahn needing to be stopped at every turn. What it actually meant was that Liu Kang had to be the one to win the tournament outright. Raiden spent the entire competition working against the one outcome that would have saved everyone. And here's where it gets permanently dark. His interference directly contributed to the deaths of Earthrealm's greatest champions. Kung Lao, killed by Shao Kahn moments after winning a match Raiden had spent the tournament engineering. Raiden called on the Elder Gods to intervene after Shao Kahn's illegal invasion, which worked technically, but everyone who died during that invasion stayed dead. There was no fixing what his meddling had already broken. Raiden's central revelation came when he understood his timeline manipulations were themselves reshaping the catastrophe rather than preventing it. Not Shao Kahn's invasion alone, not Quan Chi's necromancy alone. Raiden's desperate attempts to save everyone had accelerated the losses he was trying to avoid. This realization permanently altered fan perception of the Thunder God from heroic protector to the franchise's most structurally destructive force. The Mortal Kombat 11 storyline deepened this reading considerably. Many fans now argue that across both timelines, Raiden's willingness to sacrifice innocence for the greater good, his obsessive need to control outcomes, his consistent failure to trust the people he was supposedly protecting made him a greater threat to Earthrealm's champions than Shao Kahn ever managed alone, which is a horrifying thing to realize about your protector deity. But at least this tournament had clear stakes, unlike the complete temporal collapse that was about to hit. Kronika's time, merger crisis. Kronika's plan wasn't a tournament, it was cosmic erasure disguised as balance. The Keeper of Time orchestrated Mortal Kombat 11's entire conflict as a controlled demolition of the existing timeline. She pulled warriors from different eras, past and present versions fighting side by side, creating a temporal battlefield where Scorpion could face his younger self and Liu Kang could witness his own corrupted revenant. The goal wasn't competition. It was selecting which versions of reality deserved to survive her planned Great Reset. Here's where it gets conceptually insane. Kronika was literally cherry-picking which historical moments to preserve and which to erase. She brought back warriors who'd been dead for decades, not to give them second chances, but to evaluate whether their timelines had value. Most fighters were competing for futures that Kronika had already decided to delete. They were battling to preserve versions of themselves she'd pre-marked for extinction, and the structure she engineered? Raiden was already stripped of his godhood earlier in the story, leaving Earthrealm's protector operating at mortal level power while facing a literal goddess of time with reality warping abilities. Kronika didn't just tilt the playing field, she built it crooked from the ground up. But here's the kicker. Kronika's defeat didn't end the crisis. It triggered Liu Kang's ascension to fire god status when he absorbed her power and claimed the hourglass. A mortal becoming timekeeper, wielding control over all timelines, operating entirely outside the traditional elder god hierarchy. Kronika lost, but her plan accomplished exactly what it was designed to do: collapse the old cosmic order. The fan debate around her justification remains the franchise's most philosophically charged controversy. Righteous revolutionary challenging unjust cosmic rule, or tyrant who murdered billions across timelines for personal vendetta? Both readings are supported by the in-game evidence. She erased entire histories, but the system she opposed had been enforcing arbitrary cosmic rules for eons. There's no clean answer. What makes this crisis retroactively terrifying is realizing that every prior tournament in this video existed within a timeline Kronika could rewrite. The Great Kung Lao's victory, Shang Tsung's cheating, Liu Kang's original death, and resurrection, all of it was subject to revision by someone who controlled history itself. The entire franchise's narrative was operating inside her experimental framework. But if you think erasing timelines to enforce cosmic control is dark, wait until you see what Fire God Liu Kang chooses to do with absolute temporal power. Fire God Liu Kang's New Era Tournament. Every tournament in this franchise was built on a broken system: rigged brackets, illegal invasions, unsupervised killing floors, timeline fractures. Fire God Liu Kang looked at 10,000 years of that track record and decided to start over. Not fix it, not reform it, start from scratch, from the very beginning of time, with a new generation of champions who had no memory of any of it. That's either the most hopeful thing Mortal Kombat has ever done, or the most quietly terrifying, possibly both. Here's where it gets conceptually staggering. Liu Kang, now wielding the hourglass and the full power of the Keeper of Time, didn't just declare himself the winner of Kronika's crisis and move on. He rewound the entire timeline to its origin point and personally selected which souls would be born into the new era, shepherding specific individuals into existence, because he'd calculated they were the ones capable of protecting what he was building. He didn't save Earthrealm, he designed it, again, from the ground up. The mortal stakes of this new era tournament are unlike anything the Elder Gods originally conceived. The bracket isn't about realm conquest anymore. It's about whether Liu Kang's entire reconstruction of history can survive the forces that will inevitably rise to challenge it. Every fighter competing in this new era is, knowingly or not, fighting to validate or invalidate a decision one former Shaolin monk made with a god's power and a champion's hope. The bloodiest bouts haven't even fully played out yet. Mortal Kombat 1 reintroduces the entire roster as altered versions of themselves. Relationships rewritten, allegiances shifted, characters who were enemies now standing as allies. Scorpion and Sub-Zero as brothers. Smoke and Rain as Shirai Ryu. Shang Tsung operating as a villain again, but from a completely different angle. Liu Kang's reconstruction wasn't a clean copy of anything that came before. It was a deliberate remix, and the friction between what these characters used to be and what they are now is where the drama lives. And here's the part that matters most. Liu Kang knows it isn't perfect. He built a new timeline with full knowledge that no timeline he constructs can eliminate conflict entirely. He didn't reset history to create a paradise. He reset it to create a fighting chance, which is exactly the language the Elder Gods used when they invented the tournament system in the first place. The franchise ends where it began, with Earthrealm needing protection, with champions rising to provide it, and with the rules of engagement being quietly rigged by someone who believes the outcome is worth the compromise. some things never change. They just get a new coat of paint and a god at the controls. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.